So I want to add a Hong Kong finish to this elemental coat, and I've done it on the sides of the sleeve. That's what I'm working on now, but I want to do it also across the top. So I'm actually going to do all of the bindings on here before I put the jacket together. So that's what I want to do now. The first thing I need to do is to cut a bias strip that is 1 1/8 inch wide. It needs to make sure that it's on the bias, so it'll have this little bit of stretch, so it'll go around the curves really easily. It also makes it so it won't fray. And when we do this binding, we actually leave one raw edge. So the fact that it won't fray at all is really important with this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to pin it on here. I'm going to trim this little edge right there, make sure it's nice and even. And I'm going to bring this past just a little bit. Let me straighten that up. So I'm going to bring it past maybe a little more than a 1/2 inch or so. And I'm going to pin this in position. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull this back and a little bit up. So I'm going to make it real tight around that edge. And I'm going to pin it again. And this time I'm going to pin the binding that I did before. Now I can move this pin. And I'm just going to add a few pins along here so that I don't have to try to keep track of it too much as I'm going. Technically you don't have to pin, but I do find it hard to keep the edges really nice and smooth. So as I'm doing this, I can kind of give it a pull to get it to lay in the right position, but then I want it to relax. I don't want to pin it while it's stretched at all. So I'll come right along here. Just work my way across. You might have your edges already serged, or you could zigzag them. This one there just raw still. And now I'm going to do the same sort of thing here. So I'm going to take a pin. I'm going to put it in here. And then I'm going to trim this just a little bit longer. Bring it around and pull it up slightly. And I'm just going to repin that. Okay, so now it's pinned along the whole edge. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew this with 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then we'll bring it around to the back. All right, so I've got my matching thread on there, and I've got my 1/4 inch foot. And I'm going to go ahead and start in just a little bit, put my foot down, take out this pin, put my needle down, do a little back stitch. So then we'll go forward and we'll just stitch this 1/4 inch seam allowance the whole way. So here I want to make sure that I get onto the part that's tucked underneath a little bit before I take that pin out. So now I know it's going to catch it. I'll go ahead and back stitch. There we are. Right, so now I've got that sewn on, I need to bring this around to the back. So this will be the part that you're going to see. I'm going to bring that around. Okay, so I'm going to take my little seam roller, push this up. You could also just take this to the iron. Get that pushed up. Okay, now we're going to bring it around to the back and make it so that it just passes that line that we started with. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to reuse my pins, pin those in place. So I'm going to turn this over and I'm going to pin it flat along here. So I've got it kind of held where I want it to be, and now I'm going to really make it actually stay there. So by pinning it parallel to the edge, I can secure it a little better. Give it a little bit of a tug there, make sure it's nice and tight, because I'm going to sew it from this side. And if I pin it parallel, I'm getting a lot more of this back edge to stay where I want it to. And I can kind of double check this front, make sure it's nice and tight. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pin here as well. And again, I'm going to tuck that under, bring it down, and I'm going to pin this in position so that I can start and just take it out as soon as I get going. Okay, so now I'm going to take it to the machine and I'm going to sew it just inside this edge. And the goal is for it to catch this back here, like this has been. Okay, so it'll create a nice finish on this side, which we'll get to see, and the raw edge part will be in the seam allowances. All right, let's go sew this. All right, so I am going to sew it with a little bit bigger stitch length. So I'm going to move my stitch length up to a 3. I'm going to go ahead and put my needle down, move that out, do a little lock stitch, and then I'm just going to sew this just inside the edge. Use my stiletto to get that moving. Make sure I take my pins out as I go. And again, I'm just going to sew right inside the seam. All right, so there we have it. I'm going to trim my threads. And now this will be ready to piece together into my coat. Then when I am sewing it together, it's going to end up looking like this. So these seams are going to be, the raw edges will be covered. This will be covered when I bind the collar. So this is what it'll end up looking like at the top, with our shoulder, the sleeve, the undersleeve seam. All of these will look really nice with the bound edges. So it's just a really nice way to kind of finish it off, make it look fancy, and it really isn't too much work. It just takes a little bit of extra time for a really great finish.